Hello, 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 and welcome to a game called Choices That Matter. Basically, this is a visual novel to the extreme, as in, I'm pretty sure it is basically just a novel. Uh, there is, what is it, over 600,000 words in this visual novel, and there's over 2,400 choices to be made, which is a lot. That's a lot of choices to make in a game. So, uh, you know what? I was thinking, why not read this game, I guess, and see how it is, and maybe it'll be interesting. I mean, if there's that many choices, there's gotta be some cool things happening, right? Yeah. So, just a warning. As far as I know, this game is just going to be reading, and I'm going to see how far I can get with it. But if that is not your thing, then go click on another video of ours that is super actiony, like Hades. That's a pretty good series we have. Or Yuppie Psycho, which I'm recording right now. I mean, doing myself right now. Wait, that sounds weird. There is no death in your future, but that does not mean your decisions are without risk. Well, that is very true. Choices that matter, and the sun went out. Ooh, fade up of the music, I love it. Day 95, and the orange ball of gas that sustained life on this planet for billions of years was still burning in the sky. The scientists were completely wrong, thankfully. Something vibrated on my wrist. I raised my hand and studied the watch-like device. It was Modicon, or simply Modi, as I called them. Hello, teacher. The temperature this afternoon is a crisp 30 degrees Fahrenheit. I do hope you're wearing a warm jacket. Don't forget that you also need to pick up the travel documents from Miss Montague. She's expecting you at her home. Stepping out of the train car, I adjusted my coat. Modi was right, I should have worn the one with the wool lining. Too late to worry about that now. Dolores Montague's house wasn't too far from the train station. As my boots crunched through the snow, I felt Modi vibrating on my wrist. As ever, Modi's cheerful face greeted me. You have just received a message from Professor Soul. He is insisting you see his latest breakthrough right away. Ooh, okay, first choice. Keep them counting, guys. We gotta keep a counter for every time we make a choice. Rendezvous with Dolores, or do we visit Professor Soul? Let's rendezvous with Dolores instead. The professor will have to wait until later, Modi. We've got to get those tickets and my passport from Dolores. Would you like to know the location of Miss Montague's residence? No thanks, Modi. I've got this. No problem, teacher. You know where I am. I remembered her address, 1204 South Street. Not too far away. Before I knew it, I was knocking on her front door. It's about time you turned up. The door was opened by Dolores, a tall woman with olive skin and shoulder-length dark hair. The dim light made her features difficult to make out, and her body language suggested she was a little tired. I came as soon as I could. Anything wrong? Nothing. Thanks for your concern, though. You don't need to worry about me. I've known Dolores long enough to realize that she wouldn't let you know how she was feeling, even if there was an issue. Everything went off without a hitch. Dolores was holding a folder in her hand, presumably the one I was here for. Did anyone see you? Was there any trouble? Was there any trouble? Was there any trouble? There never is. We're professionals. So, the travel documents? Dolores handed me the folder. I looked inside and saw the usual stuff. A passport, plane tickets, credit card, and itinerary. Itinerary scanned and stored. Travel destination, Peru. Cool. So I'm headed to Peru? While I couldn't see Dolores' expression in that light, I could tell she wasn't impressed with the situation. Looks like it. Rest up. It'll be a long flight. We said our goodbyes quickly, and I sensed that Dolores was still angry at my decision. Our heated discussion the previous day was still fresh in my mind. Will we be heading to Peru right away? Remembering Sol's message, I sighed. Not yet, Modi. We still have to find out what the professor has to tell me. Sometimes I wish I hadn't hired Sol. His paranoia could be stifling. But I did hire him. I started making my way towards the professor's house. You sound upset, teacher. Has there also been a disagreement with the the professor? Does he have the same concerns as Miss Montague? It's different, Modi, or be quiet, Modi? No, it's different, Modi. It's different. I'm not going to be rude to Modi. Modi's so nice to me. With the professor, it's more about his general personality. Can't you teach him to behave better, teacher? I chuckled. No, Modi, I'm not his teacher. He's too old to have one. Oh, okay. That's too bad, because I think you're an excellent teacher. I only smiled in response, aside from reading this message out loud. While we were going through the city, my thoughts were interrupted by an elderly man standing in the middle of a plaza, sandwiched by large cardboard signs. Frozen hell is coming for everyone. I should be used to those by now. Those doomsday signs started 3 months ago, after the temporary sun outage incident. Is frozen hell coming for me too, teacher? Hell isn't real, Modi. Only humans go to hell, Modi. Oh, what do I say? Hell isn't real, Modi. I understand, teacher. Now that I was thinking about it, I wondered if that was strictly true considering how freezing cold it was this winter. It was a good thing Modi couldn't feel the chill. After about 20 minutes, I finally arrived. I wrapped my arms around myself and shivered a little. It was snowing throughout the entire journey. I crossed the lawn and pushed the buzzer on the front door. No response. I tried again. Still nothing. The door was locked, obviously. Maybe he had gone out? Pick the lock, look for another way in. Let's look for another way in. Perhaps there was an open window or something. It suddenly occurred to me that I had never seen much of the professor's home. I walked around the property, studying every possible entrance. The windows were either too high or bolted shut. Why are the windows bolted, teacher? The professor suffers from a rather severe case of paranoia, Modi, like most scientists after the incident. Why is he suffering from paranoia? Can it be fixed? I chuckled. Don't I wish, Modi. Don't I wish. Walking around the house, I found myself in the backyard, looking at the professor's back door. I tried it, and to my surprise it swung open with ease. Why wasn't it locked? Upon further examination, I realized the lock was broken. Please be careful, teacher. I cautiously stepped inside the professor's home. There was a large suitcase sitting by the front door. From its bulging sides, I had the impression that it was overpacked. Was Sol going somewhere? He hadn't said anything about a trip. Suddenly my phone rang, surprising me. It's Miss Montague, teacher. Would you like to answer it? Sure, put her through. Dolores, what's up? You might want to turn on the TV, she stated. I'm not at home right now. Hang on, I think there's a TV upstairs. I gripped the railing and headed up the steps, each wooden stair creaking and groaning as I went. Climbing into the attic, most of it was covered in a thick layer of dust and cobwebs. Disused boxes, papers, books, and paraphernalia crowded most of the tiny space. Hurry up, she urged. Patience, Dolores, patience. One area, however, had seen frequent use. A crude desk made from excess boxes and planks. Sitting atop it was an exquisite clockwork model of the solar system. There was, however, no television. The professor must have sold it since I was last up there. No TV up here either, Dolores. You'll have to tell me what's on it. The sound of her sigh came through the phone. I could practically see her frowning in annoyance. Very well. Do you remember Philip Argyle? The CEO of Flare Energy? Or the arrogant CEO who's been whining constantly since the incident? You know what? Let's just go neutral. Why not? Yes, him, Dolores confirmed approvingly. Listen to this. I could hear the television in the background getting louder.
Flare Energy stock prices plummeted to an all-time low. The CEO, Philip Argyle, is reassuring investors that this is merely a temporary setback.
I whistled. Sounds like he's in trouble. He won't last the night. You think so? Yes, luckily he's already settled his account. Are we responsible for this? No, and neither are any of our connections, Dolores assured. Good to hear. With nothing else of interest in the attic, I decided to explore elsewhere. I passed by the bulging luggage at the front door as I climbed down the second flight of stairs, headed for the basement. Yes, there's something else. Yes, there's something else I forgot to tell you earlier. It's quite important. Hang on, it's a little dark down here, I said as I felt along the basement wall. The entire room was pitch black. You see, oh, someone's at the door. Won't be a moment. I could hear her footsteps fade as she walked to the front door. Continue feeling along the wall for a light switch. Try for the gas lamp in the middle of the room. Let's try gas lamp in the middle of the room. Confident as I was with the basement's layout, I abandoned the wall and walked towards the middle of the room with my hands outstretched. Suddenly, I tripped over something heavy and fell on my elbows. It had felt like a body. Having a bad feeling, I pulled out my cell phone and dimly illuminated the heavy object. I swallowed. Professor Soul was dead. Lying on his front, the professor's back exposed a large bullet wound, his white lab coat splattered with blood. Bile rose in my throat, and I gagged, covering my mouth with my hand. My work had always been dangerous, but I'd never been confronted with the body of a friend before. My heart pounded, making me dizzy. 100 thoughts and emotions raced through my mind all at once. What did this mean? Why would someone kill him? Did it have anything to do with what we were doing? Wait, was that someone at Dolores' door? Dolores, don't answer that! Bang! An ear-splitting gunshot sound rang through the receiver. The line went silent. Whew. There isn't time. Call for help, stay on the line, and try to listen. Silence. I had to reach Dolores. I scrambled to my feet and bounded up the stairs, keeping the phone glued to my ear, hoping that Dolores would speak again. Teacher, this is most alarming. I'm concerned for Miss Montague's future. I am too. Me too, Modi. I pulled open the front door and felt a cold blast of air hit my face. It had begun to snow again. I have calculated that it will take you between 25 and 30 minutes to reach Miss Montague's residence. I knew that I could probably get there in half the time if I called a taxi. That would mean cutting off my connection to Dolores' phone, however. Hang up and call a taxi, go by foot and stay on the line. Let's do it. Dolores? I tried again, hoping she'd answer this time. The unforgiving snow was making it difficult for me to sprint. I couldn't hear much through the snow, only some shuffling and scuffling. Once I thought I heard the sound of glass shattering. Teacher, at this rate we will take 45 minutes to reach Miss Montague's residence. In other words, I'd be too late. Trying not to think about that, I continued listening while I ran. Then... click. I felt a chill down my spine. Someone had disconnected Dolores' phone. I've checked meteorological databases and this weather system should be passing very soon. Almost on cue, the snow began to thin out. It took around 30 minutes to make my way across town. As I arrived at South Street, I made a left past the diner, a favorite meeting spot for Dolores and myself. In the distance, I could see the red and blue flashing lights of police cars parked up ahead. I quickened my pace. Was she even still alive? Teacher, due to recent events, I would advise against telling police who you are. There is a very high probability that they will think you have been involved with whatever event has taken place at Miss Montague's residence. Modi was right. Now was not the time to reveal my identity, especially after Soul's murder. Something was afoot, and it was too much of a coincidence to have both events happen in the same afternoon. I needed to find out more before revealing my hand. Still, speaking to an officer was the best way to find out what had happened to Dolores. Was it worth the risk? Or was there something else I could do? Ask the nearest officer, don't speak to an officer. Oh. I'm gonna not speak to an officer. No, it was too risky, but perhaps I could eavesdrop instead. A crowd was gathering to see what all the fuss was about. I made my way behind an inquisitive young couple with small children that stood near two police officers. They were also eavesdropping. We've searched the property and there is no sign of either an intruder or the occupant. I've seen the forensics as there is a lot of blood in the kitchen. There's also a bloodied bread knife that was lying in the far corner, which I can only assume was the attack weapon. I felt sick in the pit of my stomach. Was this Dolores's blood? A female officer suddenly strode out of Dolores's front door, speaking on the phone. She lowered it and covered the mouthpiece as she shouted across to another officer leaning on one of the cars. You better drink up, Patterson! We have a body on the other side of town! A professor or something or other! I would strongly suggest we leave this location as soon as possible, teacher. While we have no confirmation that Miss Montague is still alive, we also do not have confirmation that she's dead. This is not a totally unacceptable outcome. Modi was right. I needed to get out of here and quickly. Something was happening and I wasn't sure what. I quickly turned and headed down a nearby road that ran perpendicular to South Street. I needed to get back home and prepare for my trip. Call a taxi, take a bus. You know what? At this point, let's call a taxi. The journey home was passed in silence. I watched as the snow started falling again, more heavily than before. Whether or not the colder weather could be attributed to the sun incident was a hot topic among meteorologists. When I finally walked into my apartment, Modi pinged me on my wrist. What are we doing tomorrow, teacher? That's a good question. I reached into my jacket and pulled out the itinerary from Dolores. We should stick to the plan and head for Peru, Modi. What about Miss Montague? Nothing we can do about it now, Modi. She can take care of herself, Modi. Nothing we can do about it now, Modi. Okay, teacher. Peru it is. Cool. As I lay in my bed, I thought about the events of that day. What had happened to Sol and Dolores. It couldn't be a coincidence they were both attacked on the same day. Was the murder after the research? Or something else? I felt fatigue taking over my body, my mind sinking slowly into slumber, stealing a moment of peace. Hawk 1. Completed. Okay, this is pretty cool so far. I'm into it. I'm into it. I'm gonna do another arc, and I think after we do another arc, maybe we'll call this an episode. You and 27% of players will be flying to Peru in the morning. Oh, okay. So, wow, we could have gone a lot of different ways, I guess. That's weird, huh? I wonder what we could have done differently. I guess in the beginning choice, we could have chosen to go to the scientist guy instead. Huh, but then we probably would have been too late for Dolores, maybe. I don't know. Huh, that's interesting. Well, alrighty, Arc 2, -1. Feel like that's a Mario level. Good morning, teacher. The temperature this morning is a cool 20 degrees Fahrenheit. The weather in Peru is expected to reach a comfortable 72 degrees Fahrenheit during the day and a cool 43 degrees Fahrenheit during the night. I suggest you pack for both eventualities, teacher. I groaned as I rolled out of bed. while waking up to Modi's smiling face was preferable to the bleeding of my old alarm. Waking up before dawn was never pleasant. Thank you, Modi. Is there any update in the news of Dolores or Professor Soul? Yes, teacher. The police have released Professor Soul's name to the public and have confirmed that it was a homicide. Miss Montague's case has been labeled a domestic disturbance and her whereabouts are still unknown. They have not as of yet connected the two cases, teacher. Best they don't, Modi. Packing the few things that I would need on my trip did not take long. I had learned recently to pack fast and light. Once I was done, it was a simple matter of opening the safe I had hid behind my bedside dresser and storing my few valuables away. Do you think we'll ever know who killed Professor Soul, or why? We know why. We may never know who, though. We need to keep moving forward, Modi. Well, we don't know why. We need to keep moving forward, Modi. Putting everything else in the safe, I shut it firmly and replaced the bedside dresser and stand. Should I call a taxi for you, teacher? Not just yet, Modi. I've still got time. Opening the dilapidated fridge, I searched for the last of the takeout I had bought last week and put it in the microwave. Not an exciting meal, but it would be better than what the airport had. And less expensive. Really, I mean, that's where you're gonna save on it, right? Yeah. I wrinkled my nose at that thought. I had been in more airplanes recently than I ever had in my life. The sun's 3-hour vanishing act, it turned out, wasn't just a cause for panic. It was a realization of our vulnerability as humans. Our existence could be gone in a moment. It was my job to find a solution. The microwave chimed, and I ate my stale meal in silence, leaning against the kitchen counter. Modi buzzed on my wrist. Teacher, I must insist. My GPS informs me that if you don't leave soon, you will not arrive in time to check your luggage. Alright, Modi, let's see what Peru has to offer. Don't worry so much, Modi. You'll grow gray early. You know what? Let's see what Peru has to offer. Modi, as always, was correct. By the time my taxi arrived at the airport, I had to rush to make it to my gate in time. My rush was only made worse by the droves of people who had decided that the end of the world was the perfect time to go on that long-awaited holiday. More than one person had gone bankrupt since the incident. Still, soon as I was in my allocated seat and listening to the usual warning from the flight attendant to switch all devices to flight mode. I have switched myself into flight mode as well, teacher. Your flight is scheduled to take 7 hours and 15 minutes. Should I compile a playlist for that time frame? Yes, thank you, Modi. I plugged in my headphones to Modi's slot and rested my head against the back of my seat. I would never get used to the waiting. Teacher, how many Modicon devices are there in the world? Very few. Most people cannot afford one. None like you, Modi. Thank you, teacher. Though my system would be indicated that you are being kind, but incorrect. I will play your music now. My preferred music began playing in my ears, and I relaxed as the force of takeoff pushed me into the back of my seat. I closed my eyes and tried to rest as well as I could for the long flight. Modi kept my music varied for a few hours before I drifted off to sleep. The plane touching ground jolted me awake. We have arrived in Lima, teacher. Our connecting flight leaves in 47 minutes and has a duration of approximately 1 hour. Sighing, I swiftly collected my hand luggage and headed down the stairs to the tarmac. Peruvians in traditional dress greeted us as we passed through their customs. Many of them sported depictions of a sun god, and I made a mental note to look up their significance in the local culture. Oh, isn't this exciting? I heard they slaughter 100 llamas, you know. A middle-aged woman in front of me whispered loudly to her friend, who nodded excitedly, twisting a tourist poncho in her hands. I frowned at the two. They pointed excitedly at a poster promoting Inti Raymi, some kind of festival to do with the sun. I distinctly needed a restroom. There we go. but I was suddenly very curious about why these two were here. Listen to the odd couple or find a restroom? Let's find a restroom. You know what? Being in that situation really sucks, because if you leave it, you're just gonna have to go even, like, more later on, and it's gonna suck even more. Dismissing the two ladies as tourists, I headed off to relieve myself. Still, I couldn't help but wonder if the multitude of passengers heading to Peru was a result of the incident. More than one person was sporting some kind of sun memorabilia, and I couldn't believe that was a coincidence. The wait for the bathroom took up the rest of the time before my flight. As I left the restroom, an announcement echoed that my flight was ready for boarding, and I headed to the gate. I wasn't surprised when the odd couple were also waiting to get on the same flight, an older man with worried wrinkles around his eyes hustling them along. The 50-minute flight from Lima to Cusco, I think that's Cusco, was uneventful and was certainly more comfortable than the alternative, a 20-hour journey by bus through the mountains. I made my way up the concourse and joined the throng, that's right, the throng, of passengers waiting by the luggage carousel. My small green rucksack appeared, and I quickly slipped it onto my back, making my way over to the immigration. A quick stamp on my passport with no questions asked was a perfect way to start a rather impromptu visit to South America. Now I needed to work out how to reach the center of this supposedly beautiful city, to the hotel Dolores had booked. Hire a car, head towards a waiting taxi. Let's hire a car. The fight to the hire car line nearly cost me my rucksack, but I made it there relatively unscathed. Unfortunately, as I reached the front of the line, I realized that most people were walking away disappointed, some of them complaining to each other in the local language. I didn't know Spanish, but I understood what they were saying even before Modi translated for me. "There are no more cars for hire, teacher. They have all been booked." Great. Disgruntled and frustrated, I turned back to the street. I slid into the back of the nearest taxi and battled with my baggage to find my paperwork and the name of the hotel Dolores had booked. "The name of the hotel is Santa Maria Hotel, teacher." "You've got one of those gadgets, huh? Oh, this is the driver. I don't know how to do a Peruvian accent, so... you've got one of those gadgets, huh? My daughter wants one, but simple taxi drivers like us can't afford one." I don't know why he's gonna sound the opposite of what I feel like he would sound, but that's okay. The taxi driver was twisted around in the front seat looking at me with a warm smile. Her accent pronounced her to be as foreign to this country as I was, but she seemed at ease with her surroundings. I gave her a tired smile and told her the name of the hotel, tucking my baggage away again. I guess I can change it now that I know she's a female. "What brings you to the city of the sun, mate?" she asked, expertly navigating the streets of Cusco. My company sent me here to try and figure out why the sun went out. Just decided I needed a holiday. Yeah, let's go with that. Just decided I need a holiday. Seems like a lot of people have the same idea. She nodded as if this was a common tale these days. I rubbed my neck, dreaming of a bed and a proper rest. "These last couple of days I've picked up enough travelers that are here to see the Inti Raymi festival. The hotels are filled to the brim because of it. You were lucky to get a room." I have a very good travel agent. Had, maybe now. Who knew what happened to Dolores after I had left? Still, she always did have a way of getting out of tricky messes. The streets of Cusco were beautiful, to be sure. The buildings were on an eclectic mix of Spanish and Incan influences, one built upon the other. It wasn't long before we reached our destination, the Santa Maria Hotel. It was a quaint place, not too pricey, not too cheap. It was perfect for my purposes. I thanked the driver and opened the door, ready for my travel to be over. A gust of wind took me by surprise, and I wrinkled my nose against the dust. Ignore the wind and hustle inside. Ask the taxi driver to get near to the door. Let's ignore the wind and hustle inside. That's fine. In my hesitation, I paused long enough to notice a man standing in the shadows. Something about his stature made shivers go down my spine, so I eased back into the car. Is everything all right, my friend? The taxi driver watched me in the rearview mirror. I couldn't take my eyes off the man in the shadows. Suddenly, he shifted, and I could clearly see a gun in a holster attached to his belt, as well as a golden glint to his eyes. The events back home made it clear that I couldn't stay here. It was too much of a coincidence. That man was waiting for me. I could feel it. I closed the taxi door. I can't stay here. Can you take me to another hotel, please? The driver actually turned in her seat to make eye contact. I told you, there isn't anywhere else. Are you in some kind of trouble, mate? I chewed my lip, wondering if I should tell her the truth. I didn't even know her name. Her eyes softened as she watched me. Look, I've got a spare bedroom. You're welcome to use it for a small boarding fee until the festival is passed. What are you paying here? I'll match it. It seemed hinky. Yes, hinky. Staying at a stranger's house, but given the situation, I had little choice. I agreed. She smiled and offered her hand in a firm shake. The name's Sharon. Welcome to Peru. Is this wise, teacher? We know very little of Miss Sharon or Cusco. We'll keep our wits about us, Modi, and be careful. We sometimes have to trust the goodness of people. We'll keep our wits about us. Sharon's house wasn't too far away, but the long hours and stress were catching up to me. My eyelids were too heavy to take in much of the city during the ride. Once we arrived, she showed me to her spare room and the simple, clean bathroom before leaving me to my own devices. I sorely wanted a shower, but I settled for washing my face before falling onto the single bed and dreaming dark dreams. Oh boy. The sun was still high when I woke up. I took the much-needed shower and wandered into the kitchen where Sharon was sitting, chewing some leaves from a bag. The nice thing about having a sudden boarder is I don't have to be in that bloody hot taxi all day, she told me, grinning. Smiling back at her, I sank into a seat at the table, feeling lightheaded. Are you okay, teacher? Sharon gave me a knowing look. You look like a tourist. Here, chew this. It's coca leaves. Illegal where I come from, but it'll give you the right kind of sea legs for this altitude. I took some of the leaves and studied them, curious, before popping them in my mouth. So, what are these leaves illegal? So, what's your deal, Sharon? Who are you? I'm just a cabbie. Moved out here from my home near Melbourne in Australia just over 2 years ago, but before that Inti Raymi festival. It was only meant to be a short-term thing to soak up some culture, but what are you gonna do? She seemed very casual as she said all this, as if she wasn't sitting in her kitchen talking to a complete stranger. I wondered if it was because of her occupation or just her personality. You said that you had a daughter? I asked curiously. She nodded. She married to a young Peruvian while she was on a trip here, the reason I came over in the first place. She convinced me to stay and got me my taxi. Not that it's hard around her. Any jackaroo with 4 wheels could put up a plastic sign. Why did I say gun? That was sign. Okay, that's weird. I take it you aren't a jackaroo with 4 wheels? I asked. I'm a jackaroo with 4 wheels and a taxi registration. That's better. Teacher, what's a jackaroo? It isn't in my vocabulary. A jackaroo is, it's a thing, I think. I looked back to Sharon questioningly, showing her Modi's face. She laughed, not explaining. Perhaps it was more her personality than her occupation that made her act in such a way. What is Inti Raymi? There seems to be a lot of people around this time of year. What is Inti Raymi? Sharon stood and walked over to a tiny bookshelf in the corner of the kitchen, grabbing what looked like a children's book and bringing it back. Inti Raymi was apparently the biggest festival in the Incan calendar. Something about their rulers being related to the sun gods or that kind of thing. I flipped through the pages of what was indeed a children's picture book. It was in Spanish, so I couldn't read it, but as with most kids' books, the pictures told most of the story. Somehow it lasted many hundreds of years, she continued, even after the Incans were no more. I stopped at a particular page depicting the Incan ruler trying to convince the sun to return to them. This would have taken place during the winter solstice, when the sun would seem more distant in the sky. If this is what they did when they thought the sun was wandering away, what did they do when there was an eclipse? I asked Sharon, looking up to her. She shrugged. I'm in the wrong person to ask. I just know the modern story. There's an old historian across the way who knows more about these things, but talking to him is a bit hard. He only knows Quechua, I don't know how to say that, the native language, and rough Spanish. Cool. I clicked through a few more pages before settling once again on the same page that had caught my eye earlier. It was an impossible coincidence that I was here just before the Incan Festival of the Sun. That had to be why I was sent here. But for what purpose? Surely it was all superstitions and myths. Sharon sat across from me, smiling pleasantly. My flight or fight instinct was still in effect, and I was cautious about letting her know too much. On the other hand, I did need some kind of translator to meet the historian, and she was obviously comfortable with the culture and the area. I'd like to meet the historian, and I can find my own way with a few directions. Would you care to come with me as a translator? Yeah, okay, I trust her enough. She rubbed her hands together, collecting her bag of coca leaves and standing. All right, grab what you need. I'll be out front warming up the car. She's a bit old these days. And with that, she left the room. I rubbed my eyes. While the coca leaves helped with the altitude sickness and the sleep restored my batteries, I still felt like I was a step behind and $1 short. It only took a moment to grab my bag from the spare bedroom and meet Sharon in the car. She gave me a tooth-filled grin when I jumped onto the passenger side, and we peeled off into the streets of Cusco. All around us, the city was getting ready for the festival. Lights were being hung in the main street. People in traditional dress were swarming amongst the tourists, trying to earn their Peruvian sol, the local currency. Dotted amongst everything else were the depictions of sun gods, the Incan royal family, and, strangely, llamas. I tapped on Modi's face. Modi, what's the llama's place within the festival of Inti Raymi? Before Modi could reply, Sharon piped up from beside me. Oh, they used to sacrifice them back in the day. Whole packs of them, selected for their brown coloring. She smiled pleasantly as we wound through the streets with ease. Actually, teacher, a gathering of llamas is referred to as a herd, but otherwise Miss Sharon is correct. I smiled at Modi's petulance. The programmers did a good job of recreating human emotion. I assume they don't do this anymore? Sharon nodded. They still make a show of it, but they're only symbols. Puppets, I think. I couldn't get that close the year I went. The crowds were crazy. I'm actually surprised no one wanted to actually kill some of the beasts this year after all that nonsense with the sun going out. I raised my eyebrows, surprised. Nonsense? My life had been consumed with the hows and whys of the incident, and a taxi driver dismissed it as nonsense? She slowed at a set of lights, and almost as if on cue, a man led a brown llama across an intersection. Sharon watched it casually. Maybe I was wrong. Does Australian culture have any lore about sun gods? Can you explain more about Spanish Incan beliefs and culture? Yeah, let's try that. Does Australian culture have any lore about the ending of the world or sun gods? I asked. Well, I assume not. You're a young country. She gave me a wry smile, checking her rear-view mirror. We're a young country, but to think we don't have culture is a bit laughable. Well, before the English arrived to turn us into a prison island, the land belonged to the Aborigines. Aborigines? I don't know how to say that either. They have their dream time. Dream time? I asked. Dream time is where their belief system comes from. In dreaming, they find reason for things that have no reason. They are very spiritual, connected to their land. That being said, I can only remember what I learned in primary school. She shrugged. I nodded, letting it go. Stopped again at a new set of traffic lights. I suddenly wondered if maybe it would have been quicker to walk in this frenzy. I don't know what people are getting so worked up about, though, honestly. Her tone was offhand, and I looked at her, incredulous. I like the words that they use in this. They throw me off a little bit, because I'm not expecting them to use these big, long words. But I guess if you have a game or a visual novel where it's 600,000 words, like, you have to use as many words as you can. Are you kidding? The sun went out, literally. How can you not be afraid? Let's go with that. She shrugged. It came back on. No harm, no foul. You can throw it back and forth all you want, but it happened. We're all still here and life moves on. She'll be right. She'll be right, I repeated, open-mouthed. I don't mean to alarm you, mate, but it seems that we're being followed. Friends of yours? Before I could turn to look, an SUV suddenly slammed into the back of Sharon's taxi, skidding us forward several feet. I braced myself against the console just in time. Sharon wasn't so lucky. Bloody hell! I don't know why she suddenly turned into that accent. Alright. I guess something just triggers me every time I see bloody hell, and it's like, oh, you gotta talk like, you gotta talk like this. She took the wheel, and the tires screeched as she took off again. Teacher, we are considerably above the legal speed limit. As we raced away towards the end of the street, the next set of lights turned orange. The traffic on either side inched forwards. There was a tiny side street on the right, barely big enough for Sharon's car to fit through. Her eyes flicked between the two options, gripping the steering wheel tightly. Turn down the side street, shoot through the red lights. Turn down the side street, do it! She swerved, tail spinning into the tiny side street. The back end smacked into the corner as the car squeezed in. A side mirror snapped off, but Sharon didn't seem to care, revving ahead with a wicked grin on her face. Let's outrun him, eh, mate? That chunky bugger can't go so fast down here, she cackled maniacally, deftly avoiding debris in our way. Modi vibrated on my wrist. Teacher, these might be the same people who killed Professor Soul and broke into Miss Montague's house. I would advise against allowing them to capture you. Thank you, Modi. I'll remember that. Sharon cackled again, approaching the end of the lane, a decision once more in our way. We could head right, towards the city, and lose the SUV persistently making its way down the lane. The left led away from the busy streets towards the outskirts in the direction of the historian's house. Sharon looked at me. Turn left to the outskirts, turn right to the city. Turn left to the outskirts. Sharon skidded around on the roads like a devil, obviously talented, but also enjoying the rush. The glint in her eyes betrayed how much she enjoyed the danger. I craned my head around to try and catch sight of the SUV behind us. It was still within eyesight, but Sharon created a larger gap with each passing moment. I have to inform you that Miss Sharon is breaking several road rules right now. Ordinarily, I would inform the authorities, but I can understand if you do not want me to. However, this is making me highly anxious. I braced myself against the floor of the car with my feet. I actually agreed with Modi. After we made a few more changes in direction, I turned around again. I can't see them, I shouted, and Sharon whooped, fist pumping in the air. She twitched the wheel suddenly and threw us into the car park of an old hall, tucking us out of sight behind the building, then cutting the engine. Sharon smacked the wheel in satisfaction. I think that'll do it. I don't reckon they could have followed us through all that. That was a hoot. She grinned wildly. I smiled myself, the adrenaline and relief making me feel elated. They know Miss Sharon's car now, teacher. There's a chance that they might be able to find us again. I suggest that you be cautious in how you proceed. As much as Modi was right, I also knew that if people were following me, then it wouldn't be long before they found the historian. Time wasn't on my side. Sharon was still chortling beside me, cheeks rosy. You ready to head over to that old geeze's house or what? Does Cusco have a public library that I could utilize just until I know it's safe to proceed? Sharon raised her eyebrows. Well, sure, but I thought you were in a hurry. I chewed it off. Go to the public library, head directly to the historian. Okay, let's talk about this one quickly. If I go right to the historian, there's a possibility that I'll be able to get the information from the historian first, because I feel like if I go to the public library, they're still just going to find the historian because I was already headed in that direction. Right? So they'll probably go that direction, find the historian, boom, like, the historian's gonna die, and then I am out of luck. So I feel like I should, in this moment, head directly to the historian. Sharon pulled up outside the historian's house, putting the car into park. I'm afraid it doesn't matter if you want me along or not, mate. I'm not about to sit in the open just waiting. I hesitated, but shrugged off my indecision. She had just experienced a car chase because of me and hadn't left me to fend for myself yet. Together we walked up to the old Incan-styled house and knocked on the door. What's his name again? I asked Sharon, waiting. She turned to me and smiled. You'll have to ask him. I can't pronounce it. Oh, the door opened, and you know what? I think we will call that an episode. This is a very long arc. I don't know if we're at the very end of it, but I think I'm going to call that an episode right there. Hey, you know what? If you liked this, why not subscribe? Why not hit the bell? Why not give this a big fat like? And, do all the things you do for everyone else, but just do it for us. Just do it for us. I mean, we love you, and you could love us, too, if you just hit the subscribe button. You know, it helps us out, it helps you out, because we get to deliver this amazing content to you, right? I mean, it's pretty good. It's a pretty good trade-off, I would say. Let me know what you think of this game. I'm interested in this game. It's one of those games I could definitely continue if you guys like it. If not, then I don't know if I will ever touch this game again, but I kind of want to. So I'm not really guilt-tripping you into making me want to play this game more, but like a little bit.